Welcome to AskTheLawyers.com. I'm Leslie Rohde. We get a lot of questions about car loans here. People worried about making those payments and possibly repossession. Of course, a car for most people is not a luxury. We need those vehicles to get our kids to school, get around, get to work, and run other errands. So what happens when a person is struggling to make a payment? We're happy to have David Shuster with us of Shuster Law. He's a bankruptcy attorney practicing in the greater Dallas area. Thanks for joining us, David.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Leslie.
So is there something that a person can do before he or she misses a car payment?
Actually, lenders have been, over the past few years, perhaps a little bit more willing to work with folks. And so, yeah, they can. In fact, I encourage them to try to call the lender. And my clients let me know that they will often allow them to put a payment on the end of the note, so to speak, maybe miss a payment. We've got a government shutdown right now, of course, going on. So I met with a lady who works for the IRS, and the lender took note that she's not getting paid, and so they don't expect payment until she goes back to work. So yeah, definitely, that's definitely the first line of defense.
We all have circumstances that come up in our lives from time to time, that's for sure.
Right.
So,
That's right.
so
Yeah.
can we make adjustments to the loan in the middle of the loan, or do we have to stick with the way it was written?
Well, I mean, it just depends on the lender. So yeah, these adjustments can be made directly often, and so there is a chance that if somebody calls the lender, if they're anticipating missing a payment, that it could work out well for them, and so it's definitely worth it to give that a try, and those adjustments can be made. Sure.
What if you are getting threatened about repossession by a creditor? What can a person do in that case?
Well, that would be the time to figure out, a plan. Okay, that would definitely be a good time to meet with a bankruptcy attorney if you haven't already talked to one. Getting the threat of repossession, sometimes they'll threaten it considerably before they're actually going to do it. But that would be the time to start thinking about, getting with an attorney to figure out your options. How long ago did you purchase the car? When can you start paying for the car again? Just know what your rights are, because even if you don't do a bankruptcy, there's a lot of obviously laws that govern repossession and the ultimate sale of that collateral. So yeah, that's time to get to an attorney.
And you mentioned bankruptcy there. When you do file bankruptcy, can you get your repossessed car back at that time, or is it unknown?
You can. It's usually, if it's not that same day, it's very rarely more than 48 hours to get the vehicle back. And so that vehicle is titled in the name of that person. And when you file a bankruptcy, there's an automatic stay that prevents the disposition of any collateral that is owned by the person filing bankruptcy. So even though there's a lien on that vehicle, obviously, it's the debtor's car, right? So yeah, I mean, if it's not sold, they can get it back. So we're looking at typically a couple of week period there where you have an opportunity to get that vehicle back. And so if you did lose the vehicle, you still do have an opportunity to get with an attorney. The situation is a little more pressing. You've got to get together a bankruptcy petition a little quicker, but there's options. There's options for just filing like a skeleton, bare bones bankruptcy petition within a couple of hours of talking to the attorney. Pay the filing fee. It depends how much you would pay down for that, but it's often going to be less than the 3 or 4 missed car payments that you owe, and certainly less than paying the balance of the car loan. So yeah, you get the car back, and then you work on making a plan with the court that gets approved so you can not lose your car again.
Yeah, I can definitely see where an experienced attorney in this case would be very helpful when you get to that state. Tell us what deficiency judgment is. What does that term mean?
A deficiency is going to be the amount that's left after the lender has sold the car at auction, right? So assuming they did everything correct and you didn't file bankruptcy because after meeting with an attorney, it was determined that you really didn't have it within your budget to make this plan feasible and pay the lender, and so if you're at that unfortunate point, and as is often the case, the car is sold for a little bit less than market value, and with the often inflated loans that are given, there's an amount left over. It's a deficiency. It's the amount that's left over from what the lender received at auction and the loan balance, right? So if you owe $20,000 for your car, and they go in there and they sell it for 8. I mean, that's a pretty big deficiency. 12 grand. I often meet with clients who have some credit card debt, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and then they say, "Oh yeah, well I do have this over here as well, and it's a $12,000 deficiency." It's essentially like another credit card, right? It's an unsecured debt at that point, and it's another lender that's saying that you owe them money that you haven't paid and can't pay, just like a defaulted credit card is a deficiency. And a judgment, obviously, it doesn't automatically become any kind of judgment unless they sue you in a court of law, but it happens more often than people are aware of.
I think it's good for folks to understand some of these terms, especially if they're dealing with this situation. Let's talk about bankruptcy more. I hear Chapter 7 bankruptcy, Chapter 13. Could you tell us sort of the difference between those?
Sure. And a Chapter 13 bankruptcy is the one that we're talking about to develop a plan to repay that lender, get the car back, et cetera. So if you file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy and you're late on your car, you still get the automatic stay there, Leslie. And so you're protected in a Chapter 7 from repossession, essentially, while you're in the Chapter 7, right? So a Chapter 7 is a fresh start bankruptcy where you file the bankruptcy and discharge your debts. Whether you keep your car or not is just dependent on each individual situation. Ultimately, a Chapter 7 doesn't get rid of a lien in most cases unless you do something special. So a Chapter 7 says, hey, if I'm late on my car, I can file Chapter 7, and maybe during that time period while I have that automatic stay, I can work something out to get current by the time the automatic stay is over, which is about 90 days for Chapter 7. So Chapter 13 is primarily what we're talking about with getting current with the car. You can essentially refinance the car in a Chapter 13 plan. So a Chapter 13 is something that is more closely tailored for car loans.
Okay. This term cramdown, I have to be honest, I don't know, I did not know what that meant at all. The cramdown in the bankruptcy world, when can it apply?
Yeah, cramdown, it's a great tool. That's one of my favorite things, to do for somebody. Leslie, obviously a car, everybody needs a car, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth area. The public transportation, there is none really. I mean, it's nice to see that the occasional citizen here could take advantage of it, but to be without a car is a very unique situation. So it's a necessity. And not having a car is just not an option. A cramdown enables somebody to get out of this $600 payment, $500 payment, whatever it is, where the balance is $25,000 and the car is actually only worth $10,000, right? So the beautiful thing about a cramdown is you can file, even if, quite frankly, you're current on your car, Leslie, okay? Everything's, maybe you're meeting with an attorney for another reason, or maybe you just see how far upside down your car is. But that cramdown allows you to take the car and just pay the value of the car rather than that $25,000 loan balance. And so, you can't just unfortunately go buy a car and then 90 days later, after the quick depreciation occurs, just kind of circle back around and say, I'm not going to pay the loan, I'm going to only pay the value. The thing about bankruptcy is, there's rules on both sides. It's a fair process. And so you have to have purchased that car 910 days before you file bankruptcy, right? So we look up the purchase date and see if we're, if we got to wait to file bankruptcy until we cross that 910-day threshold, because, as cars driving around that have liens on them, I would guess that the majority of them are upside down, or at least a significant portion of them, and some, shockingly upside down. So, excuse me, if you have someone who's driving a car around and they're having difficulty with the payment, and then they find out that, they don't have to pay for 3 more years, $25,000 or whatever, they can come in and pay off the $8,000 amount and they can own their car in 3 years, or for a much lesser amount, and all the while discharging all the other debt. So essentially, I'm kind of going on here, Leslie, but a cram down is basically a refinance of the loan where you're going to pay the value of the car as opposed to the loan balance.
All right. And I want to wrap it up now. Just give you a chance, though, to tell everybody, people who have had questions about this, if they are worried about keeping up with that car loan, what's the first thing that people ought to consider doing or think about?
Well, the first thing they ought to do is now often there's other debt involved. And so if it's a car loan and something else, just don't forget that factors into it, right? And so if you're having difficulty keeping up with it, and then you have a little bit of other debt out there, you should definitely talk to an attorney, because there's a way to just restructure your debt, repay only the debt that you're legally obligated to repay, and then potentially just pay off the value of your car. And aside from a cram down, Leslie, if you're not outside that 910-day rule, and you've got an interest rate that's just 16%, 17%, double-digit interest, you can take that car loan and still refinance it in the bankruptcy for 5.25%, and then you're not going to be able to pay the value, unfortunately, but still a lot less. And so if you're in that situation, bankruptcy attorneys, most of them don't charge for consultations. Talk to you on the phone. You don't even have to go there. So just find a good local bankruptcy attorney. Give him or her a call, and just find out what your options are. It doesn't take 15 minutes.
That is great advice, David Shuster of Shuster Law. Thank you so much for all the information you've shared with us today.
Thank you, Leslie.
And thank you all for watching AskTheLawyers.com. I'm Leslie Rohde. This is AskTheLawyers.com, where you can choose a lawyer that lawyers choose.